Well, think of a time when you found something very valuable. Found something valuable. Now, it may not be valuable in the eyes of the world, but it was very valuable and important to you. Could have been something we lost, huh? Lost it, found it. So let's just stop during the summer day. Just a minute. Remember the joy you had. Well, Christ uses the theme of finding something valuable, greater than anything. When we hear the message of Christ, the message he was giving to his followers and following it. A message, the joy of hearing that message and acting on it. Okay. Well, let's take a look at the examples that he used again. Well, first of all, he says the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure buried in a field. When a person finds it, sells all that he has, and he buys that field. Or finding the message of Christ, finding that kingdom of God, is like the merchant looking for fine pearls. When he finds one that's worth more than all the rest, a truly fine pearl, what does he do? Goes out, sells all that he has, and he buys that pearl. Now, Jesus is saying, this is the joy of finding my kingdom and living it out. Finding the message and living it out. Now look at the message. The key word here tonight is joy. The joy. Remember the joy that the man had finding that buried treasure, right? He buys that field out of joy. And the merchant sells all else he has, buys that pearl out of joy. He sells all he has. And that's the joy of finding God's kingdom, of finding the message of Christ and living it out. It's a greater joy for us than anything we had. Remember the field and the pearl. They were more the men were joyful because they were finding something greater than what they already had. And that's what our finding of God is in our lives. More valuable than anything we have. Now, when we remember that Jesus is talking about the finding and the action, what's essential about everybody that finds that kingdom of God and follows Christ's message, their joy is greater than anything they had before. And this is what Jesus is telling us. Finding my kingdom and finding God in you, that's more valuable than anything you have. Remember the two men. They didn't just talk about what they found. They went out and acted on it. They did something about it. And that is what we're all called to do if we're going to be followers of Christ. Maybe an example will help. Well, Sandra was a very good person. But like so many of us, she was often filled with anxiety. She worried about all kinds of things. She just worried. She could find things to worry about and other people couldn't. Well, then her grandchildren started to come into the world. And most important, come into her life. And then she discovered that the time she spent with them was the most important time of her life. This was greater than anything she had. She, quite simply, found the God that was already in her. And with that, she found something more valuable than what she had. And her worries went down the more time she spent with her grandchildren. She discovered something much more valuable. And so it is when we find the God that's within us. So how do we find this God that's in us? Well, here's just three examples, three ideas. Well, first of all, we have to be quiet. We have to let God into our lives. As the prophet said, be still, find God. Gotta let God do the talking. Second, how do we find God in other people? How do we see the God not only in ourselves, but other people? Well, one way to do it is to find God in a person maybe that's around us a lot. Someone in our ordinary lives. And maybe it's someone that we really don't care that much about. And sometimes it's somebody that we truly can't stand. It happens. But the challenge is, can we find God not only in us, but can we find God in that person? Finally, meet somebody totally new. And hopefully maybe someone that's different from us. Background, race, whatever it happens to be. Find someone different and try to get to know that person and see if we can find God in that person. And pretty soon we realize the God that's in us. So tonight, let us just ask God's help to remember the God that it's in, the God that's in each one of us.